We always know this next guest is working hard all throughout the week and brings us the best on Fridays, every day at 7:20. Every Friday, I should say. It is Brent Hubbs of VolQuest's. Brent Hubbs brought to you by Ascend Federal Credit Union, your financial partner for every stage of life. How's it going, Hubbs?
What's up, Hubbs?
What's going on? How are you guys this morning? I'm doing well, and let's get rolling for the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I hope that song got you rolling. That got me rolling this morning for sure.
Somebody that won't be rolling is Carson Beck down in Miami.
He got some cars stolen with his girlfriend.
That's all right. If the NIL reports are true, he's at the dealership buying a couple of new ones today. So
For sure. I wish I had that problem.
Hey, 3 of them, though? Can you imagine what compliance was like in 2006 for the Vols? You got 3 cars?
What a world we're in these days,
Exactly.
Ramon. What a world.
That's what I'm saying. I barely had 1 car to get stolen. Hubbs, this man got 3. And they're Lambos and Benzes, man.
It's wild. It's wild. Hey, Hubbs, we had this discussion earlier today, but we heard that Steve Sarkisian is one of the latest coaches. He's decided to cancel the spring game. And I wanted to pick your brain from the jump on this. Is this going to be the trend? Do you see the Vols joining this trend anytime soon?
Well, not this year. I think Tennessee's going to do something for a spring game. I'm not sure exactly what, but they will. I think they will have some kind of event surrounding football and fans in the stadium. But moving forward, I think everybody in college football is going to follow this trend. I don't think coaches have a lot of use for the spring game, to be honest with you. I think the scrimmage before the spring game is their real true spring game test because it's closed. There's no access to it, no fan access, no media access, no TV access. So I think what we've seen over the last few years is spring games have evolved into a little bit of a carnival, to be honest with you. Weird scoring and some one-on-one individual stuff and less 11-on-11, put the ball down and play type things. And with the, with the dissolving of the walk-on programs and limiting roster numbers from 125 to 105, you've got some number things. And then coaches, don't want anybody to see anything. Call it paranoia, call it whatever you want, but they don't want anybody seeing what they do, and they don't want anybody seeing any potential talent they have with a portal window that's getting ready to open. And so, yeah, I think spring games are going away, Kayla. I think the bigger question is spring practice going away? And you look at an OTA type system in the college game that would be maybe done in May or maybe it's done the first part of June while coaches are in town recruiting anyway, and you do 15 or 20 OTA days where you can have a football in the summertime, and it's not voluntary workouts and voluntary throws, but it's actually coaching and somewhat of a practice scenario in OTAs. They flirted and did a little bit of this during COVID when they brought teams back early to try to get ready for the season after missing spring practice. And I really don't think anybody disliked it. I think we could be moving that direction ultimately.
Hey, I know that Moan brought this up too, and it was interesting. I started to think about it because you're all always knowing they're making money. That's what they're trying to do. I mean, this is just what it is at this point. Do you think they do something like a training camp for fans where they may open up something like that, where they could make money off of it and then the fans could be satisfied too to see the players they want to see?
Man, they're going to have to eliminate a whole lot of paranoia in the coaching world for that to happen. And I don't see that. I mean, when you think about where the college game is in its secrecy right now, I mean, the media access for colleges around the country is so limited. I mean, it's just one of those deals where, I think we got 4 days of training camp last year, and then it was shut down.
Right.
There was no more access. And even when you get access, it's stretch, so you can count who's there and who's not there, and then maybe it's a turnover circuit, and it's very individual. I mean, we didn't see any one-on-ones. We didn't see any 7-on-7 work last year in fall camp. And, that's just kind of where the college game has evolved to. Now, here's the question that you have to ask is, does that ultimately affect the popularity of the game in any way? I think that's something that college ADs have to be mindful of is like, hey, are we hurting the popularity in any way because, with everything's behind an iron wall, so to speak? I remember Coach Fulmer wanted to close practices, Ramon, back in, I guess, early 2000s, 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. And Coach Dickey told him, no, you can't do it. You got to keep your practice open because we need the publicity. We need people writing and talking about the program every day. Yeah. So he did not let him close practices down in any way until the 2004 season when Coach Fulmer had the two freshmen and Eric Haynes and Brent Schaefer. But Coach Fulmer wanted to close them earlier because Nick Saban had already closed practices in Baton Rouge.
Wow.
And so that was kind of the trend that was going. And Coach Dickey said, no, we're not doing that because our fans need to know what's going on in the program, every day. And the media has rules. And if they don't follow the rules, you kick them out. But we're going to continue to allow access to your program so that you keep the popularity of your program where it needs to be. And that was Coach Dickey's belief always. But we're long past that world right now. I mean, we are long past that, and I don't know that you're ever going to get it back. There's a handful of teams that let media come, but for the most part, I don't see coaches changing.
That's Brent Hubbs with us this morning, VolQuest's and on 3. Hubbs, that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier is when you look at closing off, shutting down the spring game. One, I'll be honest with you, as players, we were in the mindset just don't get hurt. Don't go into the summer getting an injury. But there is the performance side of it, though, to where in front of your fans, you don't want to get embarrassed. I wanted to protect the quarterback. We wanted to see a big run and a big play and stuff like that. And the spring game is I think, a little bit more intimate than what the NFL can offer because these are in smaller cities for the most part, and you have families that grow up and go see these things. Caleb mentioned there has to be something that's, that satisfies Knoxville, Tuscaloosa, Columbia, Athens. They can't just get away from it unless they're about to fully adopt the NFL model at this point. And that means a CBA. That means a salary cap, and that might mean, Hubs, mandatory contracts too, because if I can't come see you and you've got me behind this iron wall, then I need to know that the players that I'm supporting through NIL potentially are going to be there more than a semester.
Well, I think the contract thing, not so much for but your point about the fans is well made, but I think the contract thing is coming because schools are saying, I need you here for more than a semester.
Okay.
Jay Billis talked about this. I think it was on Twitter earlier this week, maybe it was yesterday, where he was talking about you want to slow down some transfer portal activity, then you have got to get contracts to where guys can transfer and gals can transfer whenever they want to, but to do so they got to pay their buyout to leave to go to another school. If you're on a multi-year deal, it's like what everybody talks about. Well, the coaches can move wherever they want to. They can, but you have to pay a buyout to do that unless you've been fired. And so I think that type of mentality to slow down the portal and manage the portal a bit better has to come. Back to your point about fan access, I don't disagree with that. I think that's the concern that you have if you make it more and more secretive. Here's the thing spring games have gotten away from, Ramon. How tired did you get standing there in the heat signing autographs when you were at a spring game?
Yeah. My signature changed 3 times.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. They haven't done those. They haven't done those in Knoxville in 5 to 7 years, probably. Okay. So if you want to have something, then I think you can still do something for the fans, but it's just an NIL event. Hey, you're going to pay $10 a ticket. And we're going to stay out here for 2.5 hours. We won't be in uniform. We're not going to wear pads, but we're going to be out here. We're going to take pictures and sign autographs. And you're basically paying a ticket to come in and do a meet and greet. Yeah. I think you have to be creative and you have to look at some things because I don't think you can lose the touch with the fans. I think you have to be very mindful of that, particularly when fans are wondering semester to semester what their team's going to look like. Who's going to be on my team? Who's not going to be on my team? So I do think that's something ADs have to be very mindful of because coaches are going to want to shut it down more and more and more, right? Limit Look, we want it to all be about football, X's and O's, scheme, training, and that's where we're at. But you cannot let the fans completely lose touch. I think one of the things Tony Vitello has done a terrific job of. It's totally different sport, so it's not fair to compare it. But, man, those kids run the bases after games. You know, those kids are getting autographs. They're meeting players after games, at home games. There's a very intimate feel with his team that I think has helped him, in addition to winning, create a lot of goodwill with his program and the fan base.
Absolutely. There's a method to it, of course, and I'm just old school with it. And, of course, I just enjoy that type of stuff. But with that being said, though, Coach Hype was solidifying the staff for the most part, man. Now outside linebackers coach Lavorne Chop Harbin, man, is officially named. How big was that for Coach Hype to get that solidified, and also the special team side of it, too?
Well, I think for Coach Chop, it was a no-brainer, okay? And I know Coach Heupel has taken some criticism from some fans because all he does is promote within, right? Joey Halsey, Kelsey Pope, Alec Ablin, those types of things. But when you look at Coach Chop and what he's done the last couple of years, 3 years on the recruiting trail, his impact in recruiting players when he couldn't go on the road, and now he's been able to go on the road. He was on the road in January. You look at what he's done in helping recruit for Tennessee, not just at the defensive line position, but at all positions because of the relationship building he has started with prospects. I think I think he's the most prepared promotion into the role that he's moving into that Josh Heupel has made since he's been here. So I thought that one was a lay down and a no-brainer. And at the end of the day, I know Coach Heupel took a couple of weeks and looked around and that type of thing. But that's where he was always going to go. Evan Crabtree is a special teams coordinator, is a young coach, which, again, I think brings into the spotlight a little bit of weight. You're always promoting. What are we doing there? But Crabtree is a guy who was very hands-on and has been very hands-on schematically with what Mike Heckler is doing and did as a special teams coach. And then he brought him in some help in a veteran. And a guy who has been, coaching for a long time in the special teams world. So I think that it's going to work there. I think Crabtree is a guy who's an up-and-comer. Neither one of those guys are great recruiters, but that's not what that position was necessarily about there. So I think the question now, Ramon, is do they bring in another analyst? Do they bring in another defensive analyst? To kind of fill that void where Coach Chop was, or are they done? I think that's what we're keeping an eye on here the next couple of weeks.
Brent Hubbs, our good friend of VolQuest's, joins us every Friday at this time. Always go and check out his War Room article. It is absolutely great information. Let's switch over to some recruiting, Brent, and a couple offensive linemen that are in the mix. Ohio offensive lineman Sam Greer and Florida offensive lineman Grant Wise. What's the latest with those two in particular?
Well, Greer's going to be – he was here in Knoxville back in July and came for a game. He's going to return sometime for spring practice to see Tennessee, and he's going to have an official visit here at some point. He's a guy whose stock is on the rise. I think it's going to continue to rise, but Tennessee was in on that one early, which you're hoping pays some real benefits for him. Grant Wise is a guy who was here in January. Tennessee did a good job with that. They're going to get him back this summer. But he's going to have a lot of suitors out there as well. So, those are two prospects that Tennessee, I think, has positioned themselves pretty solidly with in terms of getting back to campus, this summer, for an official visit. And then we'll see how it closes out from there. But they're definitely involved and heavily involved with both those guys.
Hubbs, when you look at this SEC and Big Ten merge that they have going on with the college football playoffs, man, how real and serious is this going to get as far as Commissioner Sankey and the Big Ten trying to finalize this power struggle that they have right now?
Oh, I think those two are, whether they're big buddies or not big buddies, I think they both know they need each other, and I think they both know together they can run college football. Wow. And I think that's what they're looking at right now. They've got, they're trying to seize control of what the college football playoff system will look like moving forward starting in 26. How much is it going to expand? Are they going to go to 14 teams, 16 teams? Are you going to get 4 automatic buys out of each conference? you're getting more revenue than the rest of the country is getting, with the way that arrangement is taking place now. So, I mean, they're the controlling factors. I mean, they're the controlling stockholders, if you will, along with ESPN, and they know it, and they're the ones leading the charge with things. And the ACC doesn't love it, and the Big 12 doesn't love it, but quite frankly, those two conferences haven't been organized and haven't had the financials to swing the stick. And the Big 10 and the SEC realize they do, because they generate more TV revenue than the other two conferences, for sure. And they're using their power, and they're going to use their power to get the college football playoff system to the point where they think it is best for them and best for the game. And how do they generate more revenue for all of that involved? Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or we don't like it, it is about making more money.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's what it's about, because your rev share is coming. Okay. We're going to be at $20 million in rev share. What do you think is going to happen with rev share? It'll be a lot like the NFL salary cap and what they announced in the NFL this week. Hey, your cap is X number of $1 million more, whatever the new number is, right?
75.
You're not going to stay at $20 million in rev share, and that's where you're at for the next 7 years. Jeez. That number is going to grow, so that means you're going to need more money. So how do you make more money? That's what the SEC and the Big 10 are trying to figure it out. That's why the SEC is ultimately going to end up, I think, with 9 conference games, because TV is going to pay them more money for that extra game. That's going to even up the number of conference games between the SEC and the Big 10. And then I think the other question, and the most interesting thing out of what Ross Dellinger reported over the weekend, is does the SEC and the Big 10 have a annual challenge where they're playing each other in their league every year? Okay, how much more beneficial financially is that? I mean, how much more TV money do you get if the SEC and the Big 10 are playing a game every year? I mean, every team in the SEC is playing a Big 10 team every year in the regular season. And I think that's got a lot of intrigue. Coaches may not like it, okay, but I think there's some financial dollars in that one that makes sense. Also makes your scheduling a little bit easier. I think, on a separate note, Ramon, scheduling is really fascinating moving forward. Mm-hmm. How many teams want to follow the Indiana model and try to get out of some non-conference games that they don't think helps them? And we know, look, Tennessee's got – they're on the schedule at this point. They've got Nebraska coming up over the next few years. Does Nebraska want to stay in that game? Or do they look at what happened in the Big Ten and go, you know what? If we go with some patsies in the non-conference, and if we get a good draw on our Big Ten schedule – how better of a situation are we in to potentially make the playoffs? So teams are trying to figure out, future scheduling, and the ADs are all going, well, wait a minute, are we going to play each other? Because if we are, then that changes what our schedule looks like and how we do those things as well. So that's a byproduct of this that's going to come out there. But the SEC and the Big Ten are not they're not secretly meeting. They are publicly letting everybody know they're meeting. And what they're doing is they're telling everybody, we're going to dictate the terms of the future of the college football playoff system starting in 26.
Man, and speaking of money being made too, I was told don't be surprised if James Pierce runs like a 4.4 to make money. But of that group that's going up to the Combine next week, Hubs, who stands the biggest chance to make the biggest splash going into this draft season?
Well, that's a great question, because, what are you looking for in the Combine? Okay, if you're a team, what do you need to see out of each individual player? With James Pierce, it's probably not the physicality stuff, right? We're starting to hear all the stories about the character. So his stock is helped the most probably by how he does in an interview setting. I think Omar Norman Lott can help himself physically with what he does athletically. I think Elijah Simmons, not that he's going to be a first-round pick, but I think that's a guy who, depending on what that weight's going to be when he gets there, how much explosion does he show? Because, listen, at the end of the day, it's still a line of scrimmage league, and everybody wants a big boy in the middle that can hold, and that can hold a gap with a little bit of pop. Can Elijah Simmons help himself there? Then maybe the most competitive group is what the running back group is going to look like. There's a bunch of backs in this draft. I mean, a bunch of backs. Dylan Sampson is kind of all over the board. I mean, I've seen him as high as the 6th running back taken and maybe a 2nd-round pick. I've seen him as a 4th-round pick. I think what he does with his speed at the Combine, how does he catch the ball, some things like that. Does he show more versatility at the combine athletically that helps his stock? I think he can help himself. I also think he can hurt himself. He may have the biggest ceiling to jump and the lowest floor to fall to, depending on how he performs at the combine, because that's a position that everybody's still figuring out the value of, and it's a deep position in this draft.
He is Brent Hubbs, our good friend who joins us every Friday at 7:20. Thanks again. We always appreciate you, and great content as always, Brent. Have a great weekend.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. You guys stay warm, and we'll holler at you soon, all right?
Absolutely.
You too. Thanks, Brent.
All right, see ya.
All right. Well, coming up next, this Four Nations tournament that happened over the last week between U.S. and Canada has come to an end. Canada wins. But what's more interesting is what's coming out of this. There is like an NBA NHL feud, which I'm absolutely all about. We'll get into that and take your phone calls coming up next here on 104.5 The Zone.